So in today's video, we're going to be talking about kids' anger. I get this question a lot from parents asking me, is my kids' anger normal? Like, is the tantruming that they're going through and these meltdowns, is this just normal kid behavior? Or is there something deeper that's going on that I'm missing here and I really need to get some extra help? So in this video, we're going to go into what are some signs that your child's anger issues are actually problematic and there may be something deeper going on that we really need to look into. And if this is the case, what can we do about it to support them and help regulate their emotions? I'm Lisa, a child behavior expert and a parent coach. I have over a decade of experience as a pediatric occupational therapist. In my career, my passion has been to help kids who are on the spectrum, who have ADHD, sensory processing challenges, and so it's been my mission to spread awareness around sensory processing, executive functioning, emotional regulation, and so much more to help the families out there who are looking for resources to help their child. So if you're on my channel, I will be sharing lots of tips and strategies and resources for you to use at home that is going to support your child and their needs and also help them to thrive. So you might have a child who is struggling with managing their emotions. They get into angry outbursts, they get into big, uncontrollable tantrums, and you're not sure if this is just regular problems that other people face or if this is actually a serious issue. So I'm going to list out some red flags to you that are going to indicate that your child's anger is likely something that's out of the ordinary that we do need to look at more closely and address. So the first is your child is experiencing tantrums that are beyond their developmental age. So typically, we don't see tantrums happening anymore around age 7 and 8. So if your child is having tantrums around this age range, it's likely that they're really struggling with emotional regulation and that they do need some support. A second sign that this is a problem is that your child is engaging in very dangerous behaviors when they are upset. So whether this is something that they are self-harming on themselves or they're causing harm onto other people around them. So you might be noticing that when they get really upset, if they start to bang their heads against something or they really start to harm their bodies and they start to self-deprecate themselves, this is a big sign. If they're getting upset and they're starting to harm other people, if they're getting aggressive with others and violent, where they're punching, kicking, throwing things at another person who they're angry at, this is definitely a big red flag. Third, their behaviors are impacting their school performance. So because they're getting into these bouts of anger, it's making it really difficult for their teachers to manage. They might be calling you saying that they're disrupting the class and they had to be sent to the principal's office, and it was really hard for anyone to console your child and get them back into a calm state. So this would show that your child is struggling with emotional regulation. Fourth, their anger is interfering with their friendships and their relationships at school and at home. They might be getting into a lot of fights with other people and they might get physical with them. This might also be happening at home where they're fighting with siblings or with their parents, like yourself, and it's causing a lot of tension in your relationship. And to add to that point, their anger is disrupting your family life. So because they're struggling to control their anger, everyone in the household is affected. It's causing a lot of negative energy, a lot of stress. Everyone feels like they're walking on eggshells. This is a big sign that emotional regulation is a challenge and it needs to be addressed. So you might be going, this sounds exactly like my child. What do I do about it? Is there even hope for my child? I know this sounds really scary to hear that these are all signs that there's trouble with emotional regulation, but I do want to assure you that there are solutions to help your child build these skills because it is an executive functioning skill that your child can develop. They just need the right tools and the right strategies in place to help them. So the first thing you want to do is identify the trigger. Figure out what is the thing that seems to get them into the spiraling anger mode. Right? Is it that they're getting overwhelmed by their senses? They come home after school and they get into these terrorizing mode because they just felt so overwhelmed from all the schoolwork, from socializing with friends, and you ask them to do one thing and boom, that sends them into a big spiraling tantrum that will not wind down for a whole hour. So if we know that this seems to be the trigger, that they're coming home in an overwhelmed state, we need to help provide them with a more understimulating environment to help regulate their nervous system. So the first thing that they can do when they come home is get some proprioceptive input. This is deep pressure on the body that is actually calming for all of us. Just think about it. When you're in a really bad emotional state, you're upset, it's really nice to get a nice firm hug from someone. It makes you feel grounded, it makes you feel safe. So we can use different approaches like using a weighted blanket, applying that on top of your child's body to help them feel more calm. You can get them to do some animal walks where they're walking from one side of the room to the next, pretending to be a bear or jumping like a frog or kicking their legs out like a rhino. And these different animal movements really put pressure on the body and the limbs that can be really calming and regulating. If you've enjoyed my videos so far, please like and subscribe to my channel so I can make more videos like this for you. The second thing that you can do as a parent is to ensure that you're instilling consistent boundaries and expectations. When your child knows that this is what's expected of them, it helps them to focus their mind on what it is that they should be doing. The next point is to set consistent boundaries and expectations. Our kids all thrive when they are given boundaries, when things are limitless and there is really anything can go. Our kids will push further, and this will put them in situations where you might see more inappropriate behavior, and then you have to step in, which then, causes more tension. The more we have firm boundaries where our kids know exactly what it is that are expected of them, they will try to stay within those boundaries when they know that there's going to be a consequence linked to that boundary if it's passed. So let's think of it in a practical sense. So just imagine you asked your child to put away their iPad because it's dinner time, but you haven't set really any set boundaries or expectations around it. You're just asking them to put it away because it's dinner time. Well, your child's saying no, and you're stuck in a situation. You're either gonna continue to escalate your voice to try to get them to listen and do it, or you're gonna pull that iPad away and they're gonna kick and scream. Well, regardless, that iPad needs to be put away somewhere because you are the parent and you set the boundaries, you set the expectations. But if those boundaries and expectations aren't met, your child's gonna flounder. They're gonna keep pushing back and pushing back. But if you've already set that boundary and expectation, you have some leverage, you have something to hold yourself grounded to. You would say to them, this is the rule of the house. When it's time for dinner, we all put away our devices. You have to put away your iPad, I have to put away my phone. That is the rule of the house. When you've set that boundary and expectation for them, then they understand that this is the rule. And yes, they might still push back. Yes, they still might have a tantrum. That's okay because they're still learning to regulate their emotions. But when you set that firm boundary for them, they learn over time that you're not going to budge and they really have no choice but to follow the rules. The third point to this is to stay firm with your decisions. If you tell them that you've set this rule and this boundary, you better stick to that. You don't want to be wishy-washy. You don't want to be giving them, that extra 5 minutes when it's really not necessary, because the more and more you give that leeway to them, the more they're going to take it, and they're really not going to know where those boundaries are. It's really going to start making everything super gray for them. And that can be a really difficult place to start getting control over. You want to be firm and consistent with your decisions. The next step in all this is to stay calm in that moment. I know it can be extremely hard. When your kid's tantruming or they're really angry and they're showing that to you, it can be hard as a parent to stay calm in that moment and not react back. But this is one of the most important steps in this entire process, because when we stay calm and we have a regulated nervous system, we're actually teaching our kids how to regulate their own emotions, how to be calm in a moment when they're feeling overwhelmed and they're feeling upset, right? That's the ultimate goal. It's not about stifling that upset. It's not telling them that it's not okay to feel upset. But it's more about the reaction that comes after feeling that. We want to teach our kids that, hey, I get it. You're upset over something, and so am I. but this is how I'm going to handle it. This is how I'm going to stay in control of myself and my emotions and not let it get the best of me. You then want to ignore the negative behaviors. So if your child is getting really upset, they're throwing things, they're kicking things, don't just keep saying, stop that, you better stop that, stop kicking. That tends to escalate the situation more. What we want to do is really praise when we see something positive, and we also want to tell them what they can be doing instead. So when they're getting upset, and in some cases, if they're really out of control, we kind of have to wait it out. I know that doesn't sound ideal in some cases, but when our kids are extremely dysregulated, we have to wait and we can't reason with them, right? We can't explain too much about why they can't be doing something, why they shouldn't be doing this. This just goes in one ear and out the other because their brains, the part of the brain that actually can reason and use logic and use decision making is actually turned off in this moment. They are just reacting from a different part of the brain. This leads into when should we actually address that meltdown then? Because we don't want to just let that meltdown go by and not actually learn any lessons from it. So the best time is when the meltdown is over, when your child has de-escalated. So you'll start to see your child is in a more calm state where you can actually start talking to them. And this is where you can start to have more conversations. Sometimes you need to leave a little bit more space, like having this conversation right after the meltdown may actually re-trigger the meltdown. So in that case, you want to wait a little bit, give some time, and then return to it. Use this as a teachable moment where you can discuss, well, what just happened? What made you feel so upset and so angry in that moment? And then talk about, well, what can you do instead next time when you feel this way? And then we move on into our final step, which is finding the right calming tools and creating a calming toolkit for your child. So when they do start to feel that anger, they start to feel like they're losing control of themselves, well, what are the things that they can do to actually help them calm down? So when you practice this ahead of time, not in the moment, not during the actual tantrum, this is before any of this is even close to happening. We need your child to be in a calm state where they can actually think, they can actually follow your instructions. This is the time to teach them what to do when they are starting to feel upset and angry. So some things could be like deep breathing. How do we take some deep breaths? We breathe in through the nose deeply and out through the mouth. In some cases, kids need a little bit more tools than just deep breathing. They might need to have some sensory tools to help them de-escalate. For some kids, they really love proprioceptive input where they can squeeze something because that just helps to release all that tension and buildup that they're feeling from those emotions. So having a bin where it's filled with stress balls and squishable toys and exercise bands that they can pull. These are some sensory tools that you can have ready. You practice with them ahead of time, letting them know what they can do with it so that when they're in that moment, you can try to direct them to it, or maybe they'll be able to remember to use it themselves. Remember, this all takes time and practice. Your child will not just pick this up overnight. It requires repetition, consistency, and you being patient through this entire process. So if you just listen to this entire video and you're going, Lisa, like it all makes sense, but I just need a little bit more help. Don't worry, I have you covered. I've had so many parents reach out to me about this exact thing. Their kids are feeling very angry. There's so much tantruming at home. They're very dysregulated all the time and they just don't know what to do. So I developed a course all about emotional regulation. It is going to walk you through the 5 foundational pillars of what consists of emotional regulation. And it's going to show you if there are problems in any of these 5 pillars, this is the place that you need to address first. After that, I'm going to be talking all about the strategies on how to support your child and how to build their emotional regulation skills. To get more information about my course, check the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.